Okay, so if you can hear me, we're starting just a minute late. Go ahead and let me know that you can hear me, but go ahead and put it in the chat box. That lets me know that it's safe to share this on Facebook, etc. Okay, good. Welcome, Drass Go. All right, good. Excellent, excellent. Good. Then I'm going to go ahead and send the final email letting people know that we're live. And we're going to launch to Facebook. And then, of course, we'll dive into the material. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. So how is everyone doing? How was your weekend? I hope your weekend was fabulous. So while this is getting situated, we had, oh, good, Zana, I'm so glad that you're here today. We had a power outage on Sunday, and so I had to cancel all of my appointments. And my husband walked around town, and it was storming, of course. And, oops, not that one. Anyway, so now he's sick with the flu, poor guy. And so he's upstairs. He's not feeling very well. So go ahead and send him a little bit of love while, we are getting things situated. And thank you, by the way, for your patience while I get the Facebook stuff shared. It's always the first 3 minutes is interesting, getting all of everything up. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've got everything situated. And let me go ahead and make sure that I don't have anything. My phone is in front of me. Let me put it over here. It's on silent now. Okay, so I'm so excited that all of you are here live. It is really nice to have you here. And I'm really excited because today we're going to talk about the Doubty MacDoubterson. So just go ahead and press 1 in the chat box if you have ever experienced, you got an intuitive hit, you knew on some level that it was an accurate intuitive hit, and then you felt just so overwhelmed with insecurity and doubt that you could not take action on it. Go ahead and press 1 if this is true for you or has been true for you. Tracy Ann Rose says, this has been very fun and relaxing. I feel like I'm using my gifts more, and that's bringing me so much peace. Wonderful, Tracy Ann. I love it. Yeah. Okay, good. Hi, Jessica. Welcome. Yeah, good, good, good. So this is really common. I got lots of ones here. And the reason that this happens is because there's this part of your body mind that really wants to keep you safe. And it's more than one piece, right? So it's not as simple as saying, oh, it's just your ego. Just smush that puppy down and pretend like it doesn't exist. Stay in your power, right? Like if you just take that approach, how many of you have worked on your ego and then found that you still had doubts? Go ahead and press 2 in the chat box because this is something that happens a lot for folks. Yeah, Aditi says her, Tracy Ann. So we're going to talk about why that is. I love all of my fellow people who are doing this professionally. I've got to say, there's nothing but love for everyone who does this, what I do and similar work professionally. We're all here to do our part. And I've got some serious issues with the way the ego is taught. I really do. I've got some beef. And so we're going to talk about that today. But before we do, we're going to do a few other things first. And let me now see if I can share the appropriate PowerPoint. Okay. So, all right. So this is the masterclass number 3. Get your inner Doubty MacDoubterson on your side. Why am I talking about this? Because if you do not actually get your inner Doubty MacDoubterson on your side, then, as you already know, for those of you who pressed the 1 in the chat box just a minute ago, you don't actually apply any of the information that you get from your intuition. And if you get information from your intuition and then you're not applying it, that information is rendered useless. And that's not meant to be, like, don't use that as a stick to beat yourself up with. There's some very real reasons why you've had this experience, but we want to change this dynamic so that you can really experience your intuition and the peace that comes whenever you're a full partner. Whenever you're a full partner with your intuition, you will feel good. You will feel peaceful. You will feel confident. And that doesn't mean that you will give up the whole range of human emotions. You will be capable of them all, but your default emotions will be peace, calmness, alignment, etc. So we are working on shifting your default setting, not trying to erase the full range of human emotion. And that's really important, because otherwise you get into a scenario where you are shaming yourself for having perfectly normal, healthy emotions. And that also does not work, in case you didn't know. So today, what we're going to cover, a very quick review of last time, and then Drass Go. He was not able to be there for the very little part where I talked about his dream in the symbolism portion. So he's going to come, and I'm actually going to attempt to make him a co-host long enough for us to have a little discussion about his dream. Dream work is so valuable as you work with your intuitive gifts. And then we're going to talk about the 3 pieces of why doubts happen. And so number 1 is the ego. We're going to talk about that because, again, this piece is not taught well in spiritual circles, in my rarely humble opinion. I'm a Leo. And so we're going to talk about why that is, what you can do instead. We're going to talk about body misalignment and why and how body misalignment happens and how to fix that. And then this won't apply to literally everyone, but it's such a crucial piece that we can't ignore it. And so we're going to talk about the claircognizant dynamic and how to work with it. So all that makes sense? If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. And as you may have noticed, I'm giving away a lot of party favors this time. So today's class, you are going to get the Integrating with the Ego meditation. This is a wonderful meditation. I made it for the Spiritual Mechanic Foundations course. I love this meditation. And it's going to be in the replay section once the replay is up. And so you can download that, you can keep it forever and ever, and you can use it anytime you notice that your ego doesn't feel like it's fully on your side, right? And we're going to do a live meditation today too. Okay, so this is where we are. The 4 keys to connecting with your guides and your intuition. Number 1, receive intuitive information. If you have a pulse, that's all you have to do for that. Key number 2 is recognizing intuitive information. There are 4 different psychic gifts. You have claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and that comes with a sense of certainty that is short-lived. And then you get the doubts, but that's how you know you got an accurate intuitive hit as a claircog. Then you have clairsentience, which is clear feeling. This is where you are if you are an empath, but it shows up as sensation in the body. And then the 3rd one is clairaudience, and this comes through as clear hearing. And then you get clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. And this is one reason we use dreams, and I recommend doing dream work. It makes it a lot easier to work with the intuition whenever you're in working with your dreams. So also a review. The not so good belief that you want to really eliminate is I did not get any intuitive hits. This is what we like to call a domino belief. If you hold on to this belief, then you are stopping the flow of being able to accurately recognize when you're getting intuitive hit. So instead of saying I didn't get any intuitive hits, you say to yourself, I don't understand what my intuition is telling me. And then to the universe, you say, show me the same thing a different way. I don't understand this particular message. I need you to try that again, right? And be persistent. I've done this for 20 minutes at a time at some points where every 2 seconds it's like, nope, didn't understand that one either. Send it again. And so sometimes people will do it once or twice and be like, it didn't work. So I really recommend be really persistent, really follow up, and feel into that shift as you go. Okay, so we talked about dreaming last time, and we're going to bring Drass Go on because he sent me a message after the call. So let me see if I can figure out how to do that with ease. I checked this out. Yeah, let me see. What am I going for here? There we go. Do, 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 do. Okay, I think that Drass Go, you can now talk if you like. So first off, can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Okay, perfect. So welcome and thank you for being on the call with us. And, so I'd like to know, you sent me a quick email after you listened to the recording, and I'd love to discuss a little bit what we talked about in our emails, but also a little bit about dreaming in general. So could you just share with everyone what you told me about working on your shadow recently?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, first and foremost, it was a very random experience because I rarely ever actually remember my dreams. And that particular night, as I said in the email, it was horrible sleep. But then for some, I woke up or was awake right at the end of this dream, and then this thought entered of oh, you should probably send this in because I read your email the day or the night before, and I did, and then I kind of realized why, because there was so many things happening, because I just thought it was very random. And with regards to the dream itself, I mean, I've been working on my own stuff for the last year and a half, kind of going really deep into changing beliefs and energy work and things like that. So the shadow part was very relevant, and it was also kind of surprising because I thought I'd let go of a lot of this stuff, so I wasn't, after the interpretation, I was like, it makes sense. But then I was like, okay, well, is this something that I know there's always kind of stuff to work on, but I thought, okay, is this something major that I need to still uncover and work on? And with the whole with the eye mask on or off, etc. So I don't know, it was just it was a very interesting experience overall. So I'm more than happy to answer any other questions. I don't know if that was okay.
Good. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. One thing that I didn't know while we were doing it live was that your face mask was on your forehead, basically, right? And that was a really relevant piece of information because, in your dream, the sleep mask is used to show that you're asleep. Your mask is on. You are willfully and purposefully blinding yourself so you can stay asleep, but you had taken that off already. You were still wearing it. You still had the possibility of going back to sleep, but instead you were confronting your shadow. And I found that really interesting. And it was very important because it was, yeah, that's really important. And the other interesting thing that I don't actually think is because of the context with your dream, I don't think this is a symbol that you need to pay too much attention to, but I thought it was interesting that your sleeping mask was over your third eye now that you're confronting your shadow. Based on context, I think it's just where your mask ended up. If you take off your mask, it just kind of goes on your forehead. But it's interesting that you were still wearing the mask and it was covering your third eye at that point. So I would be very interested as you move forward with your life, and you're working with your shadow, you'll want to be in touch with how you are blinding yourself or putting that sleep mask on in different areas of your life. Do you have any questions, based on what I said last time? that you'd like a little bit of insight on or thoughts about?
Well, I guess the first thing I just want to share a thought. So when you shared that interpretation, it made so much more sense because like in the dream, like when I saw the guy there, um, he got startled, right? And it made sense because if the eye mask was off and if it represents me not looking at my shadow, like the shadow got scared because I was now looking at it. And then I like ran away and I got angry, etc. So like that part made a lot more sense afterwards. The question that I would have is like I've been trying to take a much more intuitive, or let's just say like tuning into more of the feminine energy with regards to just allowing things into my life. So I don't know if that has relevance with regards to keeping the eye mask over the third eye. So this whole training and everything else came at a very timely place. So I guess the question would then be, on the assumption that the eye mask is covering my third eye, like what would be, was it just a matter of practicing all the stuff that we talked about here with regards to tuning into intuition to make more day-to-day decisions?
Yeah, a couple things. So basically, especially as you're tapping into that more feminine receiving energy, uh, you want to basically practice taking the mask off completely, symbolically, right? So in the dream, you're still wearing the mask. So there's still the possibility that you could put it back on if you chose. Now, there's nothing in the dream that makes me think that you're going that direction. It's more, you noticed him. He was like, oh crap, this isn't what I meant to have happen, and then tried to run away and created a little bit of havoc as he ran away, right? So just keep in mind, if you notice a little extra havoc in your life, that's just the shadow trying to figure out how he can stay hidden. That's it. That's literally it. And the second piece is symbolically welcome all of the places that you may feel like you're still asleep, or you still want to go back to sleep, or put that mask back on. So this means staying present to the uncomfortable emotions. This also means doing that checking in process with the intuition. And especially if you have a vivid dream like this again, definitely kind of write it down, feel into it. One thing that I do, and I recommend other people do, get a high quality dream interpretation book, or Google. Google is fabulous. You can just Google the different dream meanings. Dream meaning of XYZ. And then just see what pops up and follow the ones that actually make sense. And that can help as you go through this. You already know pretty well how to tune into your intuition, because I know you do. We've talked enough at this point. And so, go ahead and utilize that, and also bring in that dream work. Your dream had such really good relevant info for you. And the one thing that I don't yet fully know what it means is the fact that the apartment number was 14, which is the same day as your birthday. But in your recording, you told me your birthday was, months ago. You're basically right in the middle there. Did you start your shadow work around your birthday?
Yeah, actually, well, a month, I would say earlier. That's kind of when
Yeah.
like, I ended a long-term relationship, started a whole bunch of other stuff, and that was around March. My birthday's in April.
Yeah. So likely that's coming up as a symbol that this dynamic started around your birthday. And the hallway is also important because that's letting you know that you're in a little bit of an in-between place too. Like I know that a lot of it's in your apartment, but then the hallway is significant because the hallway represents that in-between place where you're not really home, but you're not really, you're really close to home. It's a transition period. So my guess is your dream is telling you that this will continue to resolve until your next birthday simultaneously. So it's, first step is this started on your birthday. It's probably going to continue until your next birthday. And that's nothing to worry about. It's just giving you a little bit of a framework. Does that make sense? And did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I guess one more question. Like, I don't want to hijack this call, but I know that you mentioned like integrating your shadow, like it wants to be integrated. I didn't really understand.
Yeah. Okay. So the shadow is an accumulation of the parts of self that have been rejected. So if there's a quality in you that you are currently rejecting, then it's like, no, this is not who I want to be. I'm going to force this away. That's the act of energetically separating yourself, and that's how the shadow is created to begin with. And so, whenever you are working on integrating the shadow, you are pursuing wholeness over trying to force yourself to be your idea of good. So, for instance, your shadow is drunk and making noise. So he's imbibing in whatever numbing agents he wants to, in this dream alcohol, and he is causing a little bit of destruction. And so basically you want to stop rejecting those parts of self that make up that shadow, and instead welcome them without letting them run the show. So it's like saying, if he's drunk, let's say your shadow really likes to drink and drinks to excess, and assuming that you don't have addiction issues, then it could be as simple as saying, okay, well, I'll have one drink instead of drinking to the point of not remembering things, etc. It's about bringing in wholeness versus attempting to be the quote unquote perfect Drass Go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100% it makes sense, because I mean, part of this last year has been realizing and working through a lot of the sedation issues that got in the way of a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's 100% the relevancy.
Yeah, exactly. And that theme is also here with, you were asleep and your shadow is drunk, right? So those are basically a very similar theme here, which is really interesting. So
got it.
Thank you
Okay.
so much for jumping on for a few minutes. And everyone just say thank you for Drass Go. He opened up his dream for everyone, so we can kind of see how it's working in real life, so to speak. So thank you. And I really appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead.
Thank you for having me, okay?
Absolutely. I'm going to figure out now how to get you as not a panelist, because this is the first time I've done this live. So work with me, folks, as I figure this out. I'm going to stop share so I can figure out what I'm doing long enough. Okay, folks, just stick with me as I figure this out. Okay, just let me know. Can you just see me at this point? There we go. All right. Oh, okay. So Jessica asks, she says, thank you, Jessica. And I just wanted to ask Erin if there's a specific source where you learn so much about dreams, symbols, and meanings. So yes, first off, I've worked with my dreams for years at this point. And the other person who I like the most as far as teaching dreams is J.M. DeBoard. J.M., I'm going to tap it. So I've typed it in the chat, J.M. DeBoard. He teaches dream work. I really like his framework. He really simplifies things. He has some dream courses. And so I read his book and I've chatted with him a little bit. One of my dreams, as soon as I get my podcast launched the way I want it to, I'm going to see if he will be a guest on it so that we can talk about dreams in more depth. I think that would be a blast. But he wrote a couple books on it. He has a class on it. I highly recommend his work. So good question. Okay, any other questions before we move on to the other material? I'm going to drink water while we do that. Water is so good. All right, I'm going to see if Okay, let's see if we've got comments from the other peanut gallery, the Facebook. Okay, let's do video. Oh, I need to mute, or we'll hear my video through the, there we go. Excellent. Okay, excellent, excellent. Then we're going to move along. Thank you for your patience while we work with technology. So I'm going to share the Doubty MacDoubterson screen again. All right, so thank you, Drass Go. I really appreciate it. So another quick review, if you're clairsentient, the yes, no, or option 1 and 2 is your BFF. And so now we're going to talk about trusting yourself and your guides. So here's the thing. Like I mentioned, my husband got the flu. And so I'm actually going to share, instead of reformatting everything, since he has the flu and I was taking care of him, originally I was going to reformat everything and put it into this color scheme. But instead, I'm actually going to share the actual slides that I share in my Spiritual Mechanic Foundations course. If I can get it up, there we go. And so let me get it. There we go. So this is a part of the Integrating Parts of Self series. That's a part of the Spiritual Mechanic Foundations course. It's the most comprehensive course that I've made at this point, and it's still not done. I've been working on it all year, and there's still more to be made. And so this is all about the ego. So I want to talk about the ego for just a minute, because the ego is... it has a role. We're actually going to go here. The ego is the protector. The ego is in charge of keeping your body, mind alive and safe while you're on your earth tour, right? So basically, its only goal is to keep you safe from threats. It is completely unconcerned whether those threats are real, imminent danger, like a tiger coming at you, or a car coming at you when you're crossing the street, or imaginary, like worrying about money when you actually do have enough in your account and no one's knocking on your door demanding payment. So it's one of those really interesting dynamics that's actually necessary to be human. This is not an accident. The ego was not created so that you could have this false dichotomy of your miracles are good, the ego is bad. Now you must force yourself to only focus on one thing. One thing that you'll notice, especially if you follow my work, is that I'm a proponent of wholeness. So I'm not here to force you to be a good person. I'm here to help you be whole. That's it. You already are whole, but it's about getting the mind and body on board with it so that you can experience that integration. So here's the reason I have no hate for the ego. The ego's job is to keep you safe. Are you alive? Yeah, you are. If you're watching this on your computer or on your device, you are alive. Good job, ego. And so it's one of those really interesting things that, especially in the spiritual community, I've got some problems with us creating a polarity where one thing is good and one thing is bad. Whenever you actually need the ego to survive. If you didn't have an ego, you would not have an alarm go off whenever you needed something, right? You wouldn't have an alarm go off if an internal alarm whenever there was someone who was dangerous around you, who actually wanted to do you bodily harm. Now, who you are spiritually can never be threatened, but the body you inhabit is finite. It will one day cross over, it will die, and then your spirit will cross over. And so the ego's job is to be a protector of the physical body that you inhabit. So you don't want to turn the ego into an enemy because it has a very crucial role. You just don't want the ego to be in charge and running the show. Does that make sense before we move on? Go ahead and press 1 in the comment box. And if you have questions, go ahead and let me know. That way we can talk about them, etc. So yeah, just let me know whether it makes sense about how we're talking about the ego here today. I think we've got a question coming. Okay, so while folks are typing their questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on to how to recognize uh, the ego versus other internal voices. Um, so the ego will be a champion for the status quo. That's one way you can recognize the ego. It'll be like, things are fine, you're not dead, don't change anything, right? It thinks any change is risk. And so especially if you have a really hard time with change and shifting things, that's just letting you know that you've got a strong ego. It will try to talk you out of healthy growth for the same reason. It's just an unknown quantity. It is always risk adverse and will point out the dangers of any potential activity. And this is not always a bad thing. This is really interesting. People think, oh no, the ego is pointing out something that could go wrong. I should ignore it completely. Well, if it's trying to point out that your tire's flat and you try to ignore the fact that your tire is flat, and then you get on the road and you get into an accident, or you warp your tire and your tire pops off, or something else, like, it's not all bad to listen and explore the potential dangers. It's just a lot of them that the ego will come up with are completely irrelevant. This is why you really want to be in charge and be the spirit that you are, running the show, rather than letting the ego run the show, right? The ego will also ask you to shrink to avoid potential conflict. It just considers all potential conflict is bad and unsafe, and all potential conflict is going to end in disaster, according to the ego. And it will try to convince you to hide your light from the world. Press 1 if you have noticed your ego pop up when you try to do things that you know you are called to do. I know we've talked about this a bit, but I'm always interested in hearing more. So press 1. Okay. Where is the chat? Can you see my whole screen, folks, or are you only seeing the, let me see what I've got going on with my share. There we go. Okay, my chat completely disappeared for a minute. There we go. It is back. Excellent. Ria says, can you explain the difference between the mind and the ego? The mind is every part of self. The ego is part of the mind. The mind is, so it's just like, the ego is part of the mind, but the mind contains more than just the ego, Ria. So the mind is going to have other aspects that it works with. Let me know if that makes sense. Good. Excellent. So while we're waiting for Ria, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I don't want us to just be in a pausing thing. I do like to check to make sure everything is going the way that it's supposed to. Okay, the spiritual term versus the clinical term for ego. We're just going to cover this for a quick second. The spiritual term ego is different than the psychological or clinical term for ego, and this can cause confusion. And it's really interesting. Sometimes I'll talk to someone who has a psychology background, and they get really fed up with people who use ego in the spiritual sense, the way that we're teaching it right now, instead of, the clinical psychological term. So in spirituality, we refer to the part of the body mind that's hyper alert to potential danger, whether it's real or imagined, as the ego. Its role is as our protector in the physical realm. It protects the body. Its focus is on keeping the body safe and alive. It also will protect the mind and any mental or emotional constructs you've created. So if you created a belief system that says it's unsafe to talk to strangers, then the ego is going to help you keep that that construct as it is. In psychology, the term ego refers to a healthy sense of self and a healthy identity. That's not what we're talking about here. A healthy identity is wonderful. I highly recommend it. We would focus on solar plexus healing in the energy world. If we were working with this, that's the solar plexus chakra issue. And in Freudian psychology, the ego refers to the part of the self that mediates between the id and the super ego. And so basically the id is if I remember correctly, is the childlike portion, and then the superego is the one that wants to be in charge of literally everything. And so basically, you know, whenever we're talking about it today, we're talking about the clinical, or we're talking about the spiritual term. We're just talking about the protector role. Okay. And my system is glitching, just so you know. I've got some issues with the chat. And so anyway, the chat isn't always showing up. Okay, I found it again. There we go. Okay, good. How to appreciate the ego and its role. This is the big secret, right? Whenever you are working with the ego, whenever you want to get rid of your inner Doubty MacDoubterson, you want to get the ego on your side. You don't want to try to be fighting it all the time. Number one, fighting your ego all the time is exhausting. How many times have you had an intuitive hit, and then you had insecurities, and then you argued with yourself about how you shouldn't have insecurities? Right? And then you wasted time and energy, and you probably did not feel good because you were fighting with yourself and you were trying to argue with your ego, and your ego wants to keep you safe, and then this other part of you wants to grow. Press 2 in the chat box if you have had that dynamic happen. Nope. Exit out of that. Okay. Yeah, so we've got a lot of 2s. And so, you know, this is completely normal. And let's talk about how to appreciate the ego and its role. So basically, number one is recognizing. You want to recognize that its role is protect you from potential harm. So anytime you notice that little voice coming up and being like, hey, it's may not be a good idea to post on Facebook because someone will see what you said and then they will hate you forever. Right? That's the ego. Okay, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I really appreciate that. We're going to do this anyway. You know, this is my heart calling. I'm going to do it anyway. So basically, you want to make sure it is not running the show. So basically, if your fear is in charge, and you have, here's something that's really interesting that happens in spiritual communities too. I've watched so many people go through this. Before they get into spiritual community, people think, emotions don't matter. I'm going to do whatever I want, right? And then they do whatever they want. And then they realize that doesn't work, right? Because they're ignoring a huge part of how they can show up in the world. They're ignoring their emotions. Their emotions are giving them feedback, and it's really important. Then post getting into New Age, people are like, oh, I have to listen to every emotion, and I have to make sure I feel perfect peace and perfect alignment, and I have to be in the mood before I do anything. Well, that's the other extreme, and that doesn't work either, because then all the ego has to do to keep you from taking appropriate aligned action is make you feel an emotion. Now, the ego is associated with the amygdala and the adrenal glands. So the amygdala is a part in the brain, and it controls the fight or flight or freeze response, the fight, flight, or freeze response. And then as soon as the amygdala says, oh, this is danger, let's stop, right? That's the ego. And then the adrenal glands are like, oh, we have an issue. We need to stop. Let's send lots of hormones in the body so that they can feel panicked, right? And then the second that the ego does this, you don't take action because you've been trained from other well-meaning, probably people who I love, people that you're not supposed to take action until you feel perfect peace, right? Now that actually trains the ego that it can control you by simply giving a bit of an adrenaline response or a little bit of a fear response. It doesn't even have to be strong. So if you've noticed prior to doing your spiritual work, you seem to be a lot less emotionally reactive, you had a little bit less fear, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat box because this is really common. And then the third piece for appreciating the ego is when there is a threat that is appropriate for you to honor, make sure to thank the ego and take appropriate action to keep yourself safe. So basically, whenever you notice that there's a threat that's worth listening to, like your tires getting flat, or there's just something going on with the person that you used to be close to, but they seem a little dangerous right now, and then you find out that they are dangerous, and then you listened. Basically, you want to thank your ego. You want to say thank you. Okay. Good. I'm going to mute myself for just a second. I have to cough, and I do not want to cough in the microphone. Aditi says, anger and fear. I feel anger and fear, especially when I do solar plexus healing. I notice I'm a lot more confident expressing anger, and then I get a fear feedback loop. Okay, Aditi, we're going to talk about something that will help with that feedback loop in just a minute, because this is super common. You're not the only one, I promise. It's really common as you go into spiritual work. You're taught it was an overcorrection, right? Like a lot of spiritual teachers overcorrected the whole emotions don't matter at all to every single emotion is super important and needs to be put on a pedestal and controlled. Neither one is healthy. And so you instead want to have that balance, that willingness to feel every emotion, that willingness to listen to your ego, that willingness to stay centered in your power as a spiritual being who's wearing a meat suit. I'm wearing an Erin-Ashley meat suit. It comes complete with purple hair and, occasionally cool lipstick. And so, this is something that you inhabit your body. You are not your body, right? So you want to stay conscious of that. But we're going to get into it in a minute, Aditi. Okay. So how to integrate the ego. In order to integrate the ego, you must fully recognize its role and how it's been playing out in your life, right? If your ego is large and in charge, then, it's going to be very hard to take any type of aligned action. Or have you silenced your ego to the point of recklessness? Most people who join my classes have not silenced it to the point of recklessness, but every once in a while we'll get someone who's like, I do everything and I listen to my ego, never. And that's a problem too, because the ego is there to help. Once you understand how it's been running the show or how it's been suppressed, you'll want to have a heart-to-heart with it. And you'll want to allow yourself to fully welcome the ego's voice in yourself and allow your spirit to stay in the driver's seat, right? So this is as simple as asking your ego, what are you protecting me from, right? What are you protecting me from? And then the ego will usually tell you. It'll usually tell you, well, they're going to reject you. And then it's like, okay, I've been rejected before. I can handle that. That's okay. Thank you, ego. I appreciate your voice here, right? Because then you've heard it, you've received it, and you can choose what you do. And remember, the ego is going to come with feelings. That doesn't mean that you have to force yourself to not do things. Okay. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense before we move on. And again, bloop, there we go. Okay, great. Excellent. I'm going to get a little more water. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop this share. And thank you so much. By the way, I so appreciate all of you being here as we do this, because this is one of those subjects that I'm really passionate about. And I really want us as a community, a spiritual community, to get into a healthy relationship with the ego. I just consider it so important. And so next we're going to talk about body misalignment. And so some of you will have seen this information before. Let me go ahead and I'm going to share a PDF this time. Again, this is another remnant of my husband having the flu. I was going to organize this in some nice slides, but instead I'm going to share the PDF. The PDF will be downloadable on the replay page too, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, can you see my PDF? It should say the Sensitive Soul Solution, with soul being spelled in an adorable way, because that's me. Okay. Excellent. Good. All right. So basically, this is something I discovered in 2013. At the time, there was a really good researcher. Let me scroll down. There we go. We're going to go. Bloop, bloop, bloop. You'll get this PDF. You don't have to read it right now. Okay. So basically, what happened in 2013 is some research came out that how you hold your body is really important for how confident or comfortable you feel, right? And we're all going to do this together today. And so basically it's how many steps is it? Let's move up. Okay, so it's a 6-step process. I thought it was 6, but then I thought I was remembering a different process. Okay, so basically what happened is how you hold your body is really important to how your body feels. Now, if you think about yourself as a spiritual being that inhabits a physical body, this makes sense. How you hold your body is part of the conversation with your body about whether or not you're safe, right? Because what happens is your body will subconsciously shift how it holds itself to let you know what's going on subconsciously. So for instance, body language makes up something like 70% of the information that you get whenever you're talking to someone in person. And then whenever you are in your body, like your body's responding to things all the time. So basically you want to start becoming aware of how you hold your body. So there are 5 predominant confident inducing poses, and there are 3 confidence killers. So I'm going to try to figure out where in this PDF, oops, let's minimize that for a second, that lives. There we go. Okay, so these are the high power poses, and I highly recommend that whenever we're going to do this all together in a little bit, but in general, these help your body feel confident. Now, whenever the research first started, it was by a researcher named Amy Cuddy. You might have heard of her, and they thought it controlled cortisol levels, and they believed at the time that by holding these, it lowered cortisol. They got the information, they did the scientific research, and the scientific research supported that. And then this is very common in scientific communities, which is why it takes so long for them to figure anything out. They discovered by doing more and more research that that was not actually the case. They didn't know what was causing it, but it was very consistent that whenever people held high power poses, they felt more confident, more relaxed, and more sure of themselves. Whenever they held low power poses, they felt less secure, less safe, and less confident in themselves and their abilities. And so what I did in 2013 and 14 is I tested a different way of doing things. So in 2013 is whenever I started playing with it. In 2014 is whenever I went public with my findings. So I got on the phone with 100 empaths, and we tested how they felt holding one of the power poses, choosing a goal or an insecurity that they wanted to work on. If they were feeling relatively good and they had this goal that they wanted, they chose a goal. If they felt insecure, they chose the thing they were feeling insecure about. And the whole point is to have a conversation with the body that the insecurity is not a reason to feel lack of confidence, that instead you're inviting that sense of confidence. And so that's why it works. And so you hold one of the poses for 5 minutes while practicing meditative breathing and healthy visualization. And what it does is it resets the body so that the body can experience confidence about whatever you are focusing on. So this allows you to get your body on board as a full partner as you are moving forward. Right? Now, before I get into the power poses, let me know, 1, does this make sense? Now, Tracy Ann, I know you're already familiar with this work, but anyone else, does this make sense? Go ahead and press 1 or just type Y. Good. So Martini makes sense. Pernilla makes sense. Aditi, it makes sense. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Tracy Ann's doing the poses right now. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. I didn't actually clap loudly because I don't want to have a bad audio here, but that's wonderful, Tracy Ann. Okay, so basically, we've talked about the ego. The ego is part of the mind that's a protector, but another part of the piece for you as highly sensitive folks is to really get the body on board, to teach the body that it's safe. It's your job as the spirit that's driving the body to train the body that it is safe for it to feel confident, that it's safe for it to feel good, and that it is wise for it to do that consistently. Okay. So here's the thing though. This is like brushing your teeth, exercising, eating. You've got to do it daily, right? This is not something, if you tell your body once for 5 minutes that it's safe, and then you don't tell it that it's safe for another 3 weeks, you're not going to like the results, right? It's like if you brush your teeth once every 3 weeks, that's not a good way to keep your teeth clean. That's not a way to avoid cavities. You're going to have some problems. And so you really want to start incorporating this in your daily life, right? So you hold these for 5 minutes twice a day. Okay, now I'm going to get into the poses. There's the victorious pose. This is good if you want a little bit of a workout whenever you're doing it. This is usually the least favorite of the poses because most people are like, I just want to feel good. I don't want to work out while I'm doing the poses. So you just put your hands over your head. Now, one thing that's important is your shoulders are always going to be relaxed back and down, right? So especially if you've been at the computer, you may want to roll your shoulders a bit before you do the poses. So you see my shoulders are relaxed back and down right now. And then you put your hands over your head and your chin is up. Now, this is important, especially if you have throat chakra blocks. You want to choose a pose where you're opening up that throat area. The throat is one of the places that's really sensitive. And so basically, if you're exposing your throat, you're telling your body that you are safe, right? And so basically, the victorious pose is the best for creating a little bit of excitement. Your body starts to feel like, oh, it's time to do things. So if you need a little pep of motivation, this is usually the best pose to stick with. The executive pose can be done almost anywhere. And so this is a great one to do whenever you are relaxing in bed, whenever you're tired, but you still want to teach your body that it's safe. Like maybe you realize you get into bed and it's like, oh, I feel stressed. My body has been in fight or flight all day. I should probably do a pose, right? So you just put your hands over your head. You put your chin up, right? Again, you don't tuck your chin. Your chin is always up. You're exposing your throat. And, your ankles are crossed in front of you. It doesn't really matter how you hold your feet so long as you're not touching that stomach area. 40% of my clients reported sleeping better when they held this pose right before bed. That was unexpected, by the way. I was not testing that. It's just something that happened. And then I put it in front of other people to see if it held steady. And about 40% of people said that it helps them sleep better. So if you have sleeping trouble, this is a great pose to use before bed. Don't do it on a wooden chair. You can if you want, but it's not particularly comfortable. The friendly executive pose, this is really just one hand over. So this is really comfortable if you are on a couch and you just want to have a more comfortable position. If you're in a space that you have a lot of space around you. And this helps your body feel like it's comfortable. Now it's hard to do with this particular chair, right? Like the headrest is too far up. But basically, you have one arm to outstretch, and you do not put your second arm over your stomach. We're going to go over why that is in a minute. But you have your arms away from your midsection. This part of your body, from your chest down your stomach, that's called your midline. Whenever your midline is exposed and you don't have limbs over it, you're letting your body know, and everyone around you know, that you do not feel threatened. So you're convincing your body that you're not in a threatening environment. So especially when your ego is regularly out of control, sometimes it's because you've been running your body incorrectly and your ego is sure there's an issue. So it's trying to find the issues for you. Okay. All right. The negotiator pose. Now, some people mentioned this helps them feel aggressive, which they didn't like. So this is an important thing to keep in mind. About 10% of people, I think, said that they felt aggressive, no matter how relaxed they had their shoulders with this one. But most people actually find it really powerful and centering. So with the negotiator pose, the most important thing is keep your shoulders relaxed back and down. You do not want to tense your shoulders, because otherwise it turns into a dominant stance where you're trying to dominate something in front of you. which is not something that you really need to do unless it's a workload or a project that you're feeling like this has had control over me for too long. I'm going to use the negotiator pose against this pile of papers, right? So basically, you want to keep your shoulders relaxed. You want to place your hands flat on a table, and you want to lean into it with your shoulders relaxed back and down. And you want to, again, you don't want to tuck the chin. You'll notice my chin is parallel with my body. And so it's parallel with the floor almost. Well, no, it's not quite parallel with the floor. But you want to keep it, you just don't want to close off. You'll notice it's not tucked. You'll notice there's a 90-degree angle. That's what I meant to say. Where my chin is and my neck, right? So it's not tucked. So that's really important. And then you just lean over the table. This one works really well. And the fifth one is probably one that you have seen, is the Wonder Woman pose. And this is the one that got the most press at the time, but it's not the only pose. So you basically put your shoulders relaxed back and down, hands on hips, and you hold your head high, right? If your neck starts to hurt, you can bring your chin down. You just don't want to tuck the chin under. This is the easiest to do in public. And also, all of my folks who are in the empath mechanics course tend to email me and be like, I snuck into the airport bathroom to use this, because the airports can be really overwhelming for empaths. And so they sneak into the bathroom, hold a pose, and then get on their flight feeling much better. So I really recommend that you can hold it, that you use this one in public. That's the easiest to use. Most of the time, you don't have to do anything special for it. Okay, any questions about the poses, the confidence poses so far? Go ahead and put them in the chat box. There we go. Excellent. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the low power poses. These are the ones that are going to drain your energy. They will zap you of confidence, your feelings of resiliency, and your feelings of personal power. They literally send a signal to your body that you're not safe. And so these are the ones to avoid. Now, here's a big caveat and a really important piece to keep in mind. You want to honor the fact that you are human. There's going to be times when it's actually really comfortable to cuddle up, in a low power pose and huddle over and read a book or something. So you want to be tuned in to how your body is responding. If it feels comforting, if it feels secure, go for it. You don't want to start making it so, this is a lot like emotions. You don't want to turn some into good and some into bad. This is more, you want to check into your body when you notice yourself in a low power pose. Is this you feeling insecure? And this is, you want to honor that. You want to shift it if you feel insecure, and you want to just let yourself feel comfortable in a low power pose if that's just what feels good at that moment. Ria asks, uncomfortable sensations came up, so do we grin and bear it for the 5 minutes? Yep, Ria, we're going to go through the entire process in a few minutes. But basically what happens, especially if you've been in low power poses for a good portion of your day-to-day life recently, what will happen is you get into a power pose and your body is absolutely certain that it is not safe. And now you're holding it in such a way where it could be visible. And it's like, okay, you just told me for 3 weeks straight that we are unsafe. And now you're holding this confident pose. You're definitely going to die. You've got to stop. You're definitely going to die. We need you to close it down. Stop doing this because it is unsafe, right? So this is a conversation that's happening. So your role, Ria, is to simply hold the pose, welcome the sensations, and reaffirm that you are safe. Most people who've been holding the lower power poses or closing the body off or experiencing a high level of insecurity or anxiety in the past couple of weeks, it takes about 4 days of doing this twice a day before the anxiety about the poses fades away. Most people are just fine after the 4 days, right? So it doesn't matter if you've been doing it for a few years. Ria said, what if you've been doing it for a few years? Doesn't matter. It usually takes about 4 days. I did it for, how old was I in 6 years ago, for 29 years. And then I learned about these poses, and then I did them, and it took about 4 days. So, you know, if I've done it for 29 years, then your few years is fine. All right. Excellent. Really good question, Ria. That is very normal. Okay. So the closed off pose. So notice in this picture, I have my hands over my midsection. What you can't tell is that I'm clamping down on the midsection, which creates the sensation to the body. You're not exposing your midline. You must not be safe. Someone's probably going to attack you, or someone's just not safe to be around, etc. So basically, a quick caveat with this one: if you're cold, this conserves body heat. So for instance, right now, my husband's sick, and he's been, his fever has been breaking on and off. He's been getting the chills. And the house is like 64 right now, right? So I'm wearing a sweater. But it's like, if it's 64 in your house and you're putting your arms around you, you might be cold, right? It's okay. You do not have to force yourself to shiver in order to be confident. But whenever you are at a comfortable temperature, make sure that you're opening that body up, right? So just do a quick check to see whether you feel cold and you want to be warmer, or whether you feel unsafe. Okay, moving on. The protecting your jugular pose. So basically this one, you put your hand over your neck, and you put a hand over your stomach, and you're usually tucking your chin. So if you tuck your chin and it's below a 90-degree angle, then that's going to help your body not feel safe. And especially if you do a lot of work on the computer, instead of putting your hand on your neck, just move it up to your cheek. That's it. That's the easy shift that will work for you. And so you want to do that because you want your body to experience safety. So if you're working at the computer a lot, just don't touch your neck. That's it. And make sure your screen is high enough, right? So you can actually look at it dead on instead of always looking down. Because otherwise and take breaks, please, and do a pose. Okay. So does that make sense? We're going to move on. The fetal pose. This is one of the most disempowering. Bye, Tracy Ann. So glad that you could be here. Thanks for joining us for the hour. The fetal position is where you're in your most disempowered state. This is where victims of severe abuse tend to go automatically. Sometimes, again, it can be really comfortable on a nice, cold fall or winter day to cuddle up in the fetal pose with a book, right? Like, I'm not saying don't have a life. I'm saying check in anytime you're in one of these poses to see whether it's because you don't feel safe, or whether you're genuinely comfortable and you find it comforting in that moment. So whenever someone is in this pose, if it's a child and they're evaluating for abuse, this is one of the poses that they tend to see as a red flag. And it signals your body that you need to stay small and hide, which will prevent feelings of empowerment and confidence. Again, you know, I've had people ask me over the years, what if I love to sleep in the pose? So do I. Don't worry about it. If you're asleep, you're resting. Don't try to overthink your sleep process. So go ahead and sleep however you are comfortable. And whenever you're awake, that's what you want to focus on. Okay, so does that make sense? Let me know before we move on. We're actually going to move on to the actual process now. Floop. Okay, press 1 if it makes sense to you. Good. All right, good. Makes sense to everyone. All right, excellent. You can go ahead and stop the share. Oh no, I wasn't going to stop the share. Oh Lord. Let's try that again. I got ahead of myself. All right. So basically, what I want you to do next is to choose a goal or an insecurity. Doesn't matter which. Just choose whichever one is most accessible to you right now. If you choose a goal, you can hold the goal in mind. If you're clairaudient, then getting wording is important to the rest of you. If you're not clairaudient, then just if you're clairvoyant, hold the image. If you're clairaudient, choose the words. If you're clairsentient, choose the feeling of the goal. And if you're claircognizant, just have a rough idea of the goal. And don't worry about the rest. You don't need details here. Okay. And then go ahead and let me know when you have the goal or insecurity. And you can do the exact same process for an insecurity: image, exact words, etc. Go ahead and let me know when you got it. Okay, great. We got it. Good, good. Okay. Choose a power pose. You can do the Wonder Woman pose, the relaxed executive, the, no, this is just the executive pose. This is the relaxed executive pose. And then the victorious pose is the one standing up. And then the negotiator pose. So let me know. Go ahead and press 2 whenever you are pretty much in position and you're ready to go. Good. Excellent. So go ahead and stay in that confident position. I'm going to guide you through this. Allow yourself to focus on your breath as you hold your pose. You can choose to do this with eyes open or closed. Do whatever feels most natural to you. As you hold your pose, just do a double check that your shoulders are relaxed back and down, and that your throat area is exposed and your chin is up. And if your body starts to feel a little bit anxious or nervous, just give yourself permission to feel how you feel without trying to control it. Continue your deep meditative breathing and bring to mind your goal or insecurity. Just hold it in your mind's eye while holding this pose. And allow yourself to just hold it in your energy in whatever way feels most natural to you, whether it's an image, just a general feeling or sensation, or whether it feels most powerful to use some words internally. And allow yourself to continue your deep meditative breathing. Your mind will now do anything it needs to. So you can just let your goal or insecurity go and allow your body and your mind to process your new request, that you feel confident and secure, and continue to focus on your breath. And just do a quick check as you're relaxing in your pose, that your shoulders are still relaxed back and down, and your chin is still up, and your neck exposed. If there are any minor adjustments that you want to make because your body feels just a little uncomfortable, feel free to do that. And now that you've spent a little bit relaxing, once again, allow yourself to think about your goal or insecurity. Welcome it into your mind's eye as best you can. And welcome the energy. If there's any resistance to holding on to the insecurity or welcoming it up, you can welcome that resistance too. And now allow any of that excess energy to simply drain to the earth. Let it go back to the earth as you hold your pose and continue your meditative breathing. And allow your mind to wander. It will do whatever it wants to do. It might be coming up with some creative ideas. It might be trying to tell you why this pose is a terrible idea. Whatever it is doing, just let it do whatever it is. Trust the process. Let go of any desire to try to control this process. And one last time, allow yourself to think about your goal or your insecurity. And welcome whatever comes up for you. Just hold that goal or insecurity in your mind's eye, as well as welcoming whatever thoughts, feelings, and sensations, or even judgments come up. And let that thought go. Allow the thought of your goal or insecurity to just float away. And allow yourself to feel strong, to feel confident, to feel secure. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes, resume normal external awareness, stretch out if you need to, and then press 1 to let me know that you're back. Good. How was that? How was that exercise? Do you feel more powerful after that exercise? Do you feel like it dissolved some of the insecurity or fears? Good. Yeah. So Aditi says she feels blissful and she's feeling very powerful. Ria says it feels calming in a strange way. Very good. Yeah, that's very common. Excellent. Xana says, I used to do this every day, but haven't for the last month. I needed to do it again. I'll go back to my regular schedule of using it. It's powerful and helpful. Wonderful, Xana. I find myself occasionally getting out of alignment with using it as well. So you're not alone. And yes, definitely keep using it. Good. Excellent. So do you see how, especially now that you've had that kind of physical experience, but do you see how and why it's so important to get the body on board with using, with being confident and feeling that sense of inner power? Like, it's amazing whenever you're doing this, right? Because it feels like, oh, okay, I'm doing this and it feels really good. And then we go back and do day-to-day life, and it's harder for us to connect with that energy. Good. Excellent. Excellent. All right, folks. Aditi says, there's a part of me that's afraid of using this power using this power to harm others. Wonderful, Aditi. So are you a type of person who's really vindictive, who goes out of your way to make people feel bad and etc.? We're all human. Not anymore. Okay, so it's something that you used to do. At one point, you use your power to harm others, right? Okay. When you were a kid. Okay. Well, okay. So this is completely normal. And you're not the only one who's had this dynamic. And so here's what you want to do. Whenever you're doing this pose and you realize that there's this fear that you're going to harm others, thank the fear for coming up. Say, thank you. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I promise that I'm going to use this power to assist myself and others for the highest good, health, wealth, and happiness of all involved, right? Because that affirmation allows you to relax into it. And it's very common, especially if you've had a history of harming others with your power, then you can become afraid of owning your power because you think you're just going to revert back. And that's not how it goes, Aditi. As you grow and as you give yourself permission to hold sacred boundaries, honor your word as you feel called to, and really give yourself permission to keep yourself safe, what will happen is it's very easy to want good for other people simultaneously. So you'll find as you step into your power that you'll actually want to help others, that you'll want to assist others in experiencing the freedom, power, and happiness that you have. Does that make sense? Because everything you're talking about is the past coming up just to make sure that you're not going to go back. That's all. It just wants that reassurance. Yeah, I want the best outcome for all involved. And if you hold that intention, then your power will always be used for the highest good, health, wealth, and happiness for everyone. And so, yeah, the affirmation is one of my favorites. I use it all the time, especially in this online spiritual world where I do readings for people, for strangers. I use it anytime I'm worried that I'm going to give bad advice, right? I tune in and I create that intention and I follow the energy after that. So very good question. Very good question. Good. Excellent. So let's see here. Any other questions before I get back to the curricula? Makes it sound so formal. Okay, I don't see any questions at this time. So we're going to go to the, oh, I have to share it. Y'all. Okay, press 1 if you can see my screen. And the slide should say what we will cover. Okay. Good. Okay, good. So the last piece here, so let's talk about why doubts happen. We've got the ego, right? Our ego likes to come up. It likes to say, oh no, you should be safe, right? And then, so we're talking body, mind, spirit here. I don't know if you noticed it, but I'm all sneaky. I snuck it in there. So the body is the body misalignment, right? How you hold your body matters. And then the ego is the mind. It's part of the mind, right? And it's the protector. It's there to keep you safe. It wants to make sure that you are in a safe and secure space. And then last, we've got spirit. So this is specific to my claircogs, claircognizant individuals. I love y'all so much, and I feel you so much because I am also a claircog. And I am so familiar with this dynamic. So if you are a claircognizant individual, these poses and working with your ego, that's your best friend. Solar plexus work, so that is your solar plexus chakra. It's right underneath your rib cage in the middle there. I was the oldest of 7, so whenever siblings got into a bit of a tumbling match, that's where we'd punch each other to knock the wind out of each other. So anyway, that's how I was raised. So anyway, the claircognizant hangover is a part of how your body mind is wired if you're a claircog. And I want to talk about this because a lot of people experience this, and then they use this experience as an excuse to not honor their intuition because they don't understand it, right? And you'll now understand it. You'll understand this dynamic very clearly. I've talked about it, I think, every class so far. So claircognizance comes with its own sense of certainty. Once the psychic hit leaves, you are left with your normal levels of confidence. So if you are not doing the ego integration work and you're not doing the body posing work, then guess what? Your body's going to go snap back to that lower energy state, to that less secure state, to that place where you're riddled with insecurities, and it's not going to feel good. So it can give you a confidence hangover if you need to strengthen your self-esteem and trust in yourself and the universe, right? So basically, as a claircog, 2 things. Number 1, you want to recognize that feeling of the wind being taken out of your sails right after you get an intuitive hit. That means you got it accurate. Second, you want to start using the pose right after you get an intuitive hit that is accurate. So if you notice that feeling of insecurity, pop a pose, like be a poser. It's good for you. Then you want to continue to work on places where you feel that lack of self-esteem. So you need to work on worthiness. You need to work on boundaries. You need to exercise good mental and emotional health stuff, right? Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. It's hiding again. There we go. Okay, it makes sense. Wonderful. Okay, so that is what I like to see. So that is basically it for today. This is what I want to leave you with. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework if you're up for it. This is not required, but I think that you'll really, really enjoy it if you decide to do it. Two things. Before our next class on Thursday, I would highly recommend that you hold the power pose, right? I want you to hold the power pose twice a day, starting today. So we've done once, so sometime before you go to bed. If I've got any folks who are in Europe right now, it's okay to wait until tomorrow to start your 2. That's fine. I realize it's kind of late in Europe right now. But for anyone who is, it's still kind of the middle of the day, you're in the US or similar, then I want you to practice the power poses. I want you to do it another time today, and I want you to do it twice tomorrow. And if you can, sneak one in before our class on Thursday. The other thing that I want you to do, if you're up for it, is to do the integrating the ego meditation. It will be attached to the replay. That'll come out sometime later this afternoon. So go ahead and do that. It's a little 20-minute meditation. It doesn't take a lot of time, but definitely use the power pose around the same time you do it. That way your body can feel good. You can do the power pose right before if you like, or right after, or just in the general vicinity. It doesn't have to be perfect there. And does that make sense? Are you ready to commit to that? Go ahead and press 2 if you are committed. Excellent. So we've got some commitment. Wonderful. That's what I love to see. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so that's what I want you to do before next time. Next time, we are going to talk about living in full alignment. So we're actually going to bring everything together. We're going to talk about how to take everything you've learned, you learned about your psychic blocks, you've learned about how your psychic talks to you. We've talked about symbols. We've talked about getting your inner Doubty MacDoubterson on your side. So we're going to talk about you plus your intuition plus appropriate aligned action can really create this life that you really want to live, that your heart feels good about. And whenever your heart is really aligned, your life really starts to feel like it's beyond your wildest dreams. Not because you have external things, but because your internal state is so clear and so grounded that it just feels miraculous. That being said, you do tend to also start to get the external things. That's the really interesting thing about this. So I really hope to see you next time. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I am very excited to see all of you next time. And thank you for joining me. It's been a blast, and have a lovely rest of your day. Mwah. Bye, everyone.